When you think about losing a loved one, what comes to your mind? Grief? Pain? Heartbreak? This is certainly the case if this loss is sudden and unexpected. But what if the loss of our precious loved ones' lives was unnecessary? It is my desire to bring awareness to the month of September that just passed as National Suicide Prevention Month. The selection of this topic comes from a tender heart as I find it hitting very close to home. This summer, I lost a longtime family friend to suicide. I've seen firsthand how it can and does affect the family and the community. In honor of those who have been tragically lost to suicide, and in honor of those who have been left in their wake, I would like to present to you the latest statistics on suicide, the knowledge on how to help those around you who may be hurting, and the knowledge on how to help yourself in the situation of a horrible loss. According to the Center for Disease Control, there were almost 45,000 lives lost to suicide in 2016. That means that on average, there were 123 per day. Of those, the greatest number in the category of age were in adults between 45 and 54 years old, and with race, with white Caucasian males. Another staggering statistic, although it is a rough estimate, is that for every one suicide, there were 25 attempts, making suicide the 10th leading cause of death in the US. This is not necessary, and while there are truly no perfect answers and no perfect words to comfort those who are mourning the loss of a loved one who has been lost in this way, with some understanding and knowledge, we can do our best to spread awareness and prevent this kind of death. So we have to ask ourselves, what is our part? We have to do our best to know the warning signs. According to the Center for Disease Control, these include, but are not limited to, feeling like a burden, being isolated, increased anxiety, substance abuse or anger, expressing hopelessness, and even talking or posting about wanting to die. While there is no cookie-cutter formula for the reasoning of someone to take their own life, these may be exhibited in those who are contemplating it. I believe that another key part of our role is to be involved enough to ask how our loved ones are doing, and to follow up with them if they ever express these kinds of signs. Being that I've experienced the loss of someone to suicide, I know firsthand that sometimes these signs may not be being exhibited. Promoting connectedness within families and the communities is therefore a vital part in promoting mental health and protecting others from suicidal thoughts. So what do I do now? After all is said and done, what if you're one of those people who are trying to cope with this kind of loss? I'm going to share 3 thoughts that I have learned over the course of my personal experience. First and foremost, you are not alone. There are those who have been in your shoes and know exactly how you're feeling. Regardless of how relationally close you are to that person, suicide affects us all in many different ways, and that's okay. Second, your emotions are normal. Following the direct loss of a loved one, there are going to be a wide spectrum of emotions that you will go through, such as shock, anger, guilt, despair, confusion, and even feelings of rejection. It is important to understand them, embrace them as they come, and give yourself the grace to grieve in your own way. An article from the Mayo Clinic regarding suicide grief also presents that one should be prepared for painful reminders and for setbacks because it is all part of the healing process. Third, God can use all things for good. In the midst of dark and confusing seasons, He stays the same. A foundational verse for those in hard seasons is from Romans 8:28, and it says, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God and to those who are called according to His purpose." As believers, we have an eternal hope that one day there will be no more pain and no more hurt. While getting through each day here on earth is the hard part, we know that we are able to be testimonies of God's grace and goodness despite hardships. As I conclude, I want to remind you of 3 things. Number 1, that despite there being a higher tendency for particular demographics, anyone can be at risk for suicidal thoughts. Number 2, that because of this, you should never assume that someone is okay before asking them. And number 3, that you are not alone in the emotions you feel and that your healing journey is completely your own. So what do you say we listen to each other and make a change in our society?